Welcome to the Tug of Heart podcast on Strong Island Radio. This is the place where we dig deep into the heart to rise in love. So let's join good friends Lori and Marianne as they discuss understanding and living from the heart.
Hello. Happy spring. What a beautiful day, right?
Oh my gosh, one of the best, Lori.
So today I'm here with Marianne and also Stephen John.
Our first guest ever.
My
Hello.
own
Hi,
beloved.
listeners. Hi, Bella. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Steve. So glad you're here.
Steve is actually a surprise guest. He decided to pop in after hearing we were talking today about the upcoming weekend, which is Mother's Day.
Yes.
And I love that it's during spring and following a lot of what we've talked about in terms of possibility
Yes.
and also certainty, because to me, this just captures the essence of the balance it is to be a mom, where you have to always be Johnny on the spot, ready to be decisive, which I've told you about. There was a year specifically you had shifted into this higher level of decisiveness. Do you remember, Marianne?
I do, in the role of
And
principal.
how did it change things, do you think?
You know what? I think that it allowed for much more clarity, but it also took a lot more courage, which I think is the heart of the mother, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's standing and drawing a line and being able to hold everybody with a sense of faith that this is an important line to draw right now.
Yes. And I think contrary to like how you might feel prior to that, it actually opened up like possibility and creativity because of just it eliminated a lot of time, just tossing around things.
Being
And
in between.
It kind of sent people with a little more direction to be creative in their own way. So you're going to do this, but the creative approach is up to you, which I really loved it. I'm not sure if I've reached that point in my life, but coming back from talking about certainty and possibility last week, we've been speaking about it kind of in terms of the heart, just like the culmination of everything else we have said has been building to more and more like a definitive idea of what relationships are, even though they can be so expansive and mysterious and so much we don't know about them. There's as much we know about what they take, what to put into them, at least. Probably, ideally, I would think we would know less about what we're going to receive from relationships, but we would always want to work on what we put into it, which brings us quite naturally, as it turned out, moving towards Mother's Day. And I thought it was a good time to talk about the genius, specifically of the feminine nature.
We don't usually hear that word connected with it, right?
Correct.
We
Not
should.
We certainly should.
They
But
should
I
be
love that you're
interchangeable.
bringing
What
it.
do you think, Steve,
Absolutely.
as a male?
That
Interchangeable
sounds,
as far as I'm concerned, right?
Absolutely.
And we're going to put Steve on the spot in just a minute, and then Marianne, because that's what I like to do here. But I wanted to just start by clarifying that when we're talking about genius, it's not this idea of the testable Mensa,
Intellectual.
right? It's more of just in the word itself, gene. So the origin, the generation, the generative power, and the generative power is just really that inborn nature we have, and men and women have, the feminine nature. And specifically, women tap into it for motherhood. And I think men probably do for fatherhood. We'll talk about that in a month when they get their day. But for today, we are talking about genius in motherhood. And that is, a lot of it is relying on, if you want to talk about the internal, natural, innate nature, it speaks a lot about our intuition. And so that means what we do as moms. And now this is not to confuse motherhood with, or the intuition of a mom with limiting a mom to moms that are what you might call like a very natural mom that take to it naturally, because what we're talking about is higher and at the same time deeper, in that all sorts of moms, new moms, moms that are struggling, moms that think they aren't making it, moms that have made really tough choices to turn their children over to care for others in love and responsibility, all have this nature equally. So what we're talking about is not what a good mom versus bad mom, but just the nature itself. And actually, now that I think of it, just like we had said, when we can be decisive about this, it opens up the creativity as to how this, I think, manifests individually. Would you two agree with this so
Well,
far?
because I think that along with the diversity of the mothers, you don't need to have had a child
No.
to understand
Right.
that feminine creative force of mother.
That's right. Absolutely.
And you can be devoted and care for something in your life that is your baby, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I
you
was saying, even as we had come in, and then even if you have been a mother, it's not limited where you've reached the cap of that experience. Like you were a mom, and then you were a mom to your niece,
True.
in
I
a
was a
sense.
surrogate mom, right?
a surrogate mom, and then a mom in the form of a principal in your work with children, and then a mom as sister to me, when we've drawn that image of the whales who've lost
Yes.
a babe or a calf, and the mom that comes along and says, I will help you to do the what is it called that you called the
Tour of grief.
the tour of grief.
Yeah.
So there's not even a child, but there also is, and it's that mom's understanding that just arrives to be shoulder to shoulder with another mom.
And that's
In-
hard,
And
right,
even
Lauren?
emptiness, and says,
Oh.
when there's emptiness, what remains to hold is pain. And as a mom, here I am.
Full embodiment
So-
of heart.
So we're not even talking any limitation of even a child.
Mm-mm.
But of course, it begins with the common definition of what it is to be a mom. And so that involves motherhood, which is the living out of this vocation, as opposed to just a mom birthing a child. Okay, so there's the vocation, which is we are called to a loyalty to this nature, this genius nature within ourselves. And I would call that motherhood, at least for our purposes here. And when I think of motherhood myself, relationship, just like everything else.
Yes.
The first way, it's relational, and it is a relationship. And I'm going to quickly turn this over to Steve, but I just wanted to say, like, when I also think about what is the truth, the essence of motherhood, I like to keep things very simple as a mom. I think things are best expressed very simple, and you can sometimes see even much more dimensions and dynamics by naming it simply. So the truth of motherhood, like in terms of duties, if you want to call it that, for just the mom with her children. When I had closed my eyes last night, and I had a little bit of a hard time thinking of it because of our recent loss. And I, to imagine, so I'm speaking of motherhood. I am still a mom, but we've lost a child. What is this? And when I close my eyes and I picture like what captures what it means, like when I feel like, okay, I can rest my eyes now. I've been a mom. The family's going to sleep. And that is the last glance at a child to me, where you see that they're safe and sound.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the simplest way that I could come up with, at least for this conversation, was what it means to be a mom and how we keep our children safe and sound, and what each mean. Steve, that's all I'm going to say. Can you tell us, what do you think? You have a mom?
I have a mom. Yes.
You have children,
Mhm.
and you live with me, a mom. So tell us, what do you think about moms and genius and everything?
Everything.
Everything about motherhood.
No pressure.
Today is a very blessed day for me. I'm in the midst of two phenomenal moms right there.
Thank you.
That blows my mind. Because I didn't intend to speak. And I can't even begin to say how much I love both of them. Um, Talking about motherhood, not in an experiential way, but I wouldn't downgrade it by saying it's a secondhand way. But seeing motherhood play out just in my own living, understanding what that means always is mind-boggling and blows my mind for many reasons. I'd like to illustrate a couple of anecdotes. One of my privileges is to work at a correctional facility where I screen in inmates. And one of the questions that I have to ask is, are you allergic to any medication? None, whatever. But common one is penicillin. You're allergic to penicillin? Yes. What happened when you took penicillin? Oh, I don't know. My mama told me that. That is the invariable answer to penicillin allergies. Mama told me that. And it's mama, not my mom, mama. And I, smart aleck that sometimes I am, I was like, what else did your mom tell you? And depending on where they are, some of them look sheepishly and they're like, sorry, doc, or, I screwed up or whatever. But that musing about what moms tell their kids who turn out to be inmates, that's for another day. But another picture that I wanted to bring out was this 60-something-year-old gentleman, crushing chest pain, comes to the hospital. I had to admit him. And definitely it was a heart attack. And at that time, we did not have the facilities to intervene at our hospital, so he had to be transferred and so on and so forth. So he needed an urgent cardiac catheterization. And I was telling him, this 60-something-year-old gentleman, look, we need to intervene. We have to do this cardiac catheterization. And his first thing was like, I have to tell mom. Excuse me? Your mother? And he said, like, yeah. Where is she? Oh, she's in Connecticut. And I was like, look, I do not have the time for that. And, you do not have the time for that. And he insisted that mom show up. But he had to ask mom first. And I could not get his consent. So everything was held in abeyance. And a few hours later, I was at my workstation and I hear the noise of a walker down the hallway. That was this 90-something-year-old mom.
Wow.
Who would cross the ferry just to be with the son. Who, first question out of her mouth was, how's my baby? This 60-something-year-old, however, others looked at, but for him, for the mother, that's her baby. Please don't hurt my baby. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when did this ever stop? And the answer was clear. It never stopped. She never stopped being his mom. I marveled at that. So when I think about motherhood, when we speak about nature and nurture, I think motherhood's nature is nurture. To hold what is her child or her offspring, or however that is, the real child or metaphor of a child, nurtured all the way through and beyond, because that bond is love. That love never stops. Love never ceases. Therein lies the genius. It's simple, it's straightforward, and they do what it takes. Mothers are amazing. And this is across, even in the animal kingdom, try to mess with a bear's cub.
Right.
Right? just yesterday, I was watching this YouTube video of an alligator sneaking up on a baby, I think it was an antelope or a deer. And mom was right there, didn't see this happening, but the rustle of water, and then the alligator had pounced on this little baby. Deer is supposed to be skittish, not this one. It stomped on the alligator's head. And it was so mind-boggling because it was stunning. Because the alligator also was surprised as I was, and it just opened its mouth and mom got the kid away. I don't know where dad was. Dad was probably calculating the logic of things. But that's mom. Jump in and figure out the rest, right?
Absolutely, yes.
To keep their offspring safe and sound, as Lori mentioned earlier, what does the sound mean? You know, I was just, this is how I get distracted.
Mhm.
Sound is vibration. Sound could mean something that's good, of sound knowledge and so on and so forth. Something is a sound quality. So what does it relate? How does this relate to a mother-child relationship? The first sound that the baby ever hears is mom's heartbeat, as most of you know. So it's just boop, 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 for months on end. And that familiarity, that persistence, day in and day out, I do not know what it speaks to this little growing creature inside. But somehow it spells safety. That sound spells safety for this kid. Vision comes afterwards and starts then. The child starts, the baby starts hearing mom's voice first also. And how the mom talks in the secret language that no one knows. The conversation goes on with every heartbeat. And Papa comes back from work. Hey, how are you guys doing? Good. Okay. You know, eat, go to sleep or whatever. But that conversation, even in sleep, never stops. I can't think of any other relationship that is so unceasing for such a long time. And when the child is born, that seems to be what the baby is looking for. The first cry, you know, physiologically getting oxygen into your lungs, but where is that sound? Where is that voice that I know? And our current practice is to put baby on mom right away as soon as possible to nurture that initial bond that, again, like I said, never ceases. The child then grows. We were not talking good mom or bad mom. Mom does what she feels is best in putting everything together. And Marianne, you have daughters. They probably asked you, what should I wear today? You know, or do I look good in this? Or, you know, and you decide. And those might be, in the larger scheme of things, trivial, but I'm sure that it didn't stop there, did it?
No.
Right? There will always be your children and ask questions for, you know, what could be potentially life-changing decisions. What do I do now, Mom? You know, my mom coddled and cuddled me till I couldn't take it.
Or those around him more like could not take it.
But she was a sweetheart. Growing up, I did not know. I mean, she grew up in ranks in her chosen field of in insurance. She actually became the personal assistant to the CEO of the company, but she started as a typist. And we're talking about the days when click clack, those things, you
Yes.
had to hit it hard and no mistakes right through 3 copies. There was one day that I went actually to her office, and I realized why her hands were hurting at the end of the day. Those fingers never stopped. Those fingers just darting along the keyboard and working and working and working ceaselessly so that I could be safe and sound, I'm sure. Then Lori happened.
Aw.
I cannot tell enough about what or how things were between Lori and Seth. All that I can say is when I come back from work, it was like entering a very sacred and hollow, messy place. I would never know what I would be walking into. There would be serious, highly emotionally charged conversation about the advantages and disadvantages of placing a zombie before a flower. For those of you who do not know, as I still don't, it's a game, Plants vs. Zombies. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The heated discussion about the merits of the dandelion over, I don't know. So I was quote unquote the intruder, and I would just try to see what it was all about. And yeah, sure, I got drawn into this whole dynamic. But of course, there was more going on there than that, right? Mom was telling her child, it's okay to lose. Hey, you're going to do better the next time, right? Or, yeah, you did it, and you'll do it again. You're awesome. And that's what moms do. Failure, little failures, little falls are just ways of learning that the mom safely lets the child learn, and then into adulthood, right? We still, if we have moms present in our lives, if you're fortunate enough, we still sometimes ask the mom, like, Mom, what should I have done something different here? Or because we know that the answer will come from the heart. And that is what we need. We are sure, and it's kind of fitting that this topic today about motherhood flows from the previous topic, the last time, just certainty. You can be sure of your mom. You can be sure of what motherhood means. We're not talking about outliers or for that deer, for that gazelle, that might be the way of life, protecting her young every day from mortal dangers. Probably mom's present duties don't involve stomping out alligators, but protecting their young ones from harm that is as bad. The nurturing aspect always comes forth. They make sure that the sound that they heard when they were babies, that they can rest in that safety, because that is the closest that you can see in human nature about unconditional love. And that never stops, no matter what.
I like what you're saying. So for so many reasons, of course, but I think, Marianne, this also kind of like the example Steve has given and what he's saying, it really points to also the human capacity across the board, moms or otherwise. This, because it's really hard for us to capture when we're having these conversations, that we get to heart living before we're really ever ready. We're not ready. But the only way to it, I think you had said, is by doing it.
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so what happens, I think, is I feel like this is so personified and such a good example when you see moms when they have a child. We have right in front of us the highest form of recognition, which we've also spoke about, and the highest form is one that demands instantaneous response, appropriate response. And so being a mom is a response to the dignity right in front of us. Nothing to do with prep, nothing to do with people have babies that did not know they were pregnant. Nobody comes prepared for what motherhood's going to do, right,
No,
Marianne?
and I think that, first of all, there's a lot that's moving through me just seeing both you and Steve sitting
thanks for
side by
Yeah,
side.
this is a lot.
No, just because there's so much the presence of Seth.
Right.
And I'm so reminded of his essence. And I was thinking, I looked over at our title of our show, Conversations of Grief and Joy. And the thought occurred to me that motherhood is a dedicated conversation
Yes.
about grief and joy,
You bet.
because we are always celebrating and we're also grieving a certain loss in the milestones that our kids reach.
Right.
Yay, you're finally walking. And oh, you're no longer just crawling.
Yeah.
And so we go through these passages, and it takes a certain type of sacrifice in knowing that this kind of devotional love is ultimately to let go, right? Not to possess.
Right.
And there is a story that Lori shared with me briefly last week when we were at lunch. And I think it is, to me, the epitome of what's happening here for me today. And she said that when Seth was very ill, Steve, you said, I would trade places with him.
Oh,
I would
that's good.
lay down my life for him in a second. And Lori said, I would not, because then he would have to bear what it means to have life without a mother. And so in that kind of divine masculinity of, I will lay down my life, and in the divine mother of, I cannot bear my child's suffering. The pain of this loss is what I'm feeling today. And it also is occurring to me for anyone who has lost a child at Mother's Day, or any child who has lost a mother
Mom, yes.
at Mother's Day. This is a solemn passage. And
Yes.
part of what we have to do for each other is doing what you're doing today, Steve, which is you show up at the cross. You show up and you bear it and you make it a little easier. Because for Lori even to be able to come to the table today and do
Yeah.
a show while you're, grieving, but still your commitment and your devotion to this, to your heart and to your son's legacy, you show up. But then, Steve, you appear at this moment where the presence is, I will be here and witness and contribute and walk through this passage with you. So to me, it is, mothers cannot do this alone. The work of true mothering is a collective work, because sometimes, our hood is down
Right.
and
Right.
we are completely exposed and we are not safe or sound. And then someone else has to put that on for us. And so I am in the presence of this kind of love right now. And I'm just
Mm.
so grateful for both of you that you're
Thanks,
here,
Maria.
that you're
Thank you, Maria.
speaking of this, that the essence of Seth is at this table today. And I think that none of us escape motherhood or childhood without the wound, the
Mhm.
mark, and the mark is part of the legacy. It's part of moving on and growing and making better. And I also thought of those prisoners, which would be maybe someone that I might judge quickly. And I thought, oh, that person has a mother
Yep.
who is grieving this.
Oh,
And some
yeah.
of them are moms themselves.
Yeah.
And there are moms themselves who have had to leave their children behind.
Right,
Right.
right.
Mhm. And I think the other thing about Steve being here is I think men and also just the masculine within us also can learn so much from just the example that moms set of how like transformation happens, in that we're asked to be like creative, have insane stamina, and then this increased tolerance for pain. We have to very quickly also develop a tolerance for utter defeat and loss.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
there's no getting around it.
Mhm.
Not uniquely me, not uniquely you. And we've had terrible losses, but moms must have this. And what happens is we are asked to perform this without first having to look at our own capabilities. And I think this is the magic, the part of the mystery of the heart, is that we jump in
Mhm.
without saying, I'm jumping in to provide this that I have. You're just jumping
Jumping
in, knowing that you are this child or this soul in front of you. There's a component that is needed, and you show up and you contribute without knowing what it is. But the real genius and really high form of the nature that becomes almost supernatural to me is that in doing that, you find out that that missing component, it wasn't a capability, it wasn't a skill, it was the willingness, it was the yes that we always say, the response. It is the response ultimately to that tug of heart. And in doing that, you find that I jumped in not knowing if I knew how to be a mom, but what it took to be a mom is the ascent.
And
There you
it's
go.
Essentially.
it really is an example. What you're talking about right now is the full embodiment of heart led,
Right.
because it is like I am at your service.
That's it.
Like I am
Yeah.
here to serve. I'm out of my own head.
And
my-
also
what I'm getting
I
at
come
of
with
this,
no capability.
Right.
I come and I'm
But
going to
I'm here
mess
to
up
serve.
awful, but here I am.
and I will
Because
serve
the other
with
thing
all
is
my
that
heart.
moms take so much heat, and teachers take so much heat because they're at the front of a room as a mother head.
Mhm.
If you think about, like, traditionally they would consider teachers this, not just in a religious context, but they served, or you have like the school mothers, or just this
Mhm.
idea of it. And people are very quick to criticize them, but you have to understand they've jumped in, not even there is no measure for your capability because every day will be unique. And every day will be something that you could not have imagined being put together. But what I was saying about with Steve and men and masculinity,
Yes.
learning from the feminine genius, is that one of the capabilities we do absolutely have the moment we dive in is that mother's intuition. And that comes from observing and considering.
Mhm.
And we are always on some level doing it. And this isn't just as an ideal, but that what a mom does is she watches her children grow. She watches maybe some deer. I don't know the situation of the deer or antelope you spoke about, but maybe just peripherally as she drinks her own water, she's got an eye on the
I know,
child.
yeah.
as a child starts to wander towards danger, the mom's watching. When it gets a little too far, it's beckoning back in. But we're always watching and kind of adjusting parameters because, like you said, Marianne, that we would turn them over ultimately. So we keep them safe, but we want them to develop this soundness, which to me means they are able to sustain their own safety and soundness in that they are not affected. Their true nature is not diminished by things that are not of it in the world. And so it's this beckoning and letting go that I think over time we keep them safe as they develop their own capacity to keep the most precious parts of them. This is not to say, I mean, safety, we're all physical beings and there are dangers, but there is an element, I hope at least the three of us here can agree on, that heart living also kind of dictates, as you had said, that there's a part of it that is sustainability, where you, as your heart becomes more and stronger, it also becomes less penetrable by what it is not. So you're true to yourself, but what you find is as you do it, it's not that you become oppositional to the world, but it actually kind of assists the world in moving in the same direction. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
and I do think that I go back to the image of the mother seeing the child asleep,
Mhm.
safe and sound.
Yes.
And in those moments in my motherhood where the child is just returned to innocence, pure love, no matter what kind of day we had, would be a period of kind of what you're talking about too, which is my own reflection. This quiet time where I would raise the prayer of, oh God, help me to do better tomorrow, right? With the mistakes that I may have made during the day. And that kind of emptying out and surrender to, this is not going to be a perfect process, but I am going to remain here. I am not going anywhere. I'm going to stay devoted to it. That ultimately is translated to the child. Like that is one of the things my kids tell me today as adults.
I was picturing your story about Emma at night.
Yes, asking me if she could go to sleep, right?
Oh, the
It's-
story.
But it's
So sweet.
but I think that's part of it because she probably at a very young age was able to access that genius in herself, where she's seen that you're safe and sound, and then she's off. I don't want
amazing.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I never
but that
thought
you
of
say
it
that because
way,
it's
right?
very much your nature, and our kids do
Yeah.
fall near the tree.
That's
It's
true.
just the way it is,
Those apples
which is
don't
in
fall far.
in a very practical way why you also want to get it right, because you're teaching them.
And healing yourself,
And
sort of,
and I was
There you
thinking,
go.
right?
when
As you teach them.
when you say at night, like the safe and sound, it's also like our respite. Part of the
Yes.
dynamics of the light being removed from earth and stuff is also we will stand firm and we will stand in what we have said. Okay, you know this, Steve. Like I mean what I say. I meant what I said.
We'll do. Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
But then we have this little respite where we go to bed stubborn. The kids have been sent to bed and we did not move. What we said would not be moved. And then they go to bed and then we can examine ourselves.
Yes.
What was
Yes,
regrettable about that?
exactly.
And we can be like, well, boy, did I ground myself today with them. Or you can, at some of those nights, the thing that our kids don't always know is we very firmly sometimes will send them off,
Right.
standing our ground. And when they've gone to bed, we very gently are asking for forgiveness for the same
Yes.
things.
Yes.
And this is
Lord.
that
I've said
sacred,
that
this is
prayer.
the sacred third that you have talked about, where they want their way. We say, absolutely not. I say this, where there's two people at a head face to face. This is opposition. And then the third comes in and holds mother and child at the end of the night, because I'm not going to give in just because a mom shouldn't, because the one thing that you've been promised since that heartbeat is the certainty
Ooh,
and unmovingness of a
you
mom.
brought this all around. She
But-
did it,
but like-
Steve.
She
She
did.
did.
Oh, yeah.
the steadfastness,
Wow.
right? So sometimes, and that's a secret that kids, we've let the cat out of the bag, but we are like, no, and you will go to bed and you will wake up and you're going to start
Mhm.
like this. And then they go off and maybe we weep and pray and say, that was so
Help me,
rotten, so
right.
rotten. But a weak heartbeat or an erratic is still the consistency.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and that's why moms also have this ability to be unmoving,
yes.
and knowing what can be yielding within them
Mm.
and what marks a mom as sacred territory, and that doesn't change.
Mm.
And it's a very delicate walk, and it is a mystery even to us, because even as we know, I'm not giving in because I said I am not. That is right, but we also know that we're also in the process at the same time of self-correcting what we say
For
we
sure.
will not change because what I said goes.
Yeah.
It's very and this comes back to this whole thing of being precarious, but also acting uncertainty, because that spells safety for our
Mhm.
children always, and soundness.
Beautiful.
That's awesome.
So that's a beautiful wish for Mother's Day. May we
May
all
y'all be
have
safe
safe
and
and
sound,
sound,
and
and
rest.
also tap into your sound that Steve was talking about, the vibrational sound.
Yeah, I hadn't even
Yes.
thought of it
right,
until you
just
said
that
it.
feel of the vibration
And
of the love.
the other thing that I mentioned, and I just want to repeat again, we speak commonly of children, but it's Marianne coming until she feels I'm sound, but it's every day. Yeah, you're in for a long one. Good luck. Hope you packed a lunch, Marianne. But okay, too much laughter. No, but it's coming and saying, I'm here. You can feel me, you can see me, you can borrow, which is Marianne's one of her gifts. I say all the time, you may borrow the anchor of my roots because you feel so unrooted.
right.
And you can do this. And this is a very motherly gift. So we point it out as a very young child and a mom, but it goes up to 90 and 60, the mom and the one you
Yes, that
spoke
were
of, Steve.
talking, Steve.
And it's a nature, and it's a spirit about us that is the genius. So it's available almost like we've said, like almost in a shape-shifting way, where relationally, sometimes you're friends, sometimes I need the advice of a mother, sometimes I need a sister. And mothers also, for another day, have that capacity to just shift into the component that's always needed.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to limit it to that, because you've been a tremendous mom in this studio week after week with me,
Mm.
where there are not children, and yet there are.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, there are. for
Right?
sure. Mhm.
So much more, but I mean, everything we've done, this, I think, first season has been kind of introducing, and I mean, we'll see where it goes. I hope you'll come back.
Oh,
to
please,
see us, Steve.
Steve.
I'd
Be a
love to,
guest
yeah.
anytime.
Yes. Steve and Marianne are such orators, and good storytellers. I love to hear both of you. I hope you will come back.
Yes, Steve, it was great to hear you today.
Bobby, happy Mother's Day.
Mhm.
Thank you.
this is, we're here with Bobby on Strong Island. You can like and share the station. You can like and share the podcast. Thank you for listening. Remember, just to listen to your nature,
Mm.
and don't be afraid of that feminine nature. It's pretty fierce, right,
And-
Steve? What do you
Yes.
think? Yeah,
And like Steve said, nurture your nature.
I
Nurture
love that.
everything.
I know- I
Nurture
hadn't
your
thought of that.
nature.
I
Like
will-
whatever your nature is, nurture it.
that.
right,
Oh, love it.
right, absolutely. So until next time, please farewell, everyone.
And
Farewell.
let's not forget, each week we're doing a heart brief, which is kind of like a recap. And,
Oh, yes.
like rounding the conversation up. And each week, check that out every Friday. So we'll have the part one episode aired every Wednesday, and every Friday a little brief that you could listen to over the weekend anytime you get a chance to sit down for 15, 20 minutes.
Yes, and Bobby, thanks for doing that. It's like a little abbreviation for we have so many friends and listeners so busy in life. I mean,
Exactly.
The
we don't
shorter
even need to
version.
explain it, but he's had this idea where we can, especially with me when I just
That's an
ramble
excellent
on and
idea.
on, but now
Not
we can just
rambling.
kind of have a little concise rounding up of what was spoken of.
Exactly.
And then if it's for you, listen to the whole thing. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Thanks,
Got
Bobby.
it. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you. Until next week, guys.